Tuesday, June 28th. This is a regular meeting of the Fargo Board of Education. Let's please stand if you are able and recite the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a motion for approval of the agenda? Jim?
I move adoption of the agenda with the addition of an HR addendum to be added to item 6C.
Jennifer?
I will second it with also a request to add one item to discussion. Business, sorry.
Would you be able to indicate what item?
Oh, yes. Discussion on the recent information released around North Dakota School Board Association deciding not to renew their membership with National Association.
Jim? Okay.
Where are we putting that?
Would that be, I would put that as C under business.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. The agenda is approved. Moving on to the recognition of audience. At this time, the board will hear comments from the public. We ask that each speaker who has signed up to address the board state their name and home school district for the record. Speakers must refrain from using this forum to criticize or complain about a specific employee or student by name. Vulgar or profane language will not be tolerated. The board is interested in your comments and will listen carefully, but is not obligated to respond or debate issues in this forum. Should you desire a written response to a specific question, you may request it. This evening, each speaker will be allotted a maximum of 5 minutes. Upon conclusion of the allotted time, a chime will sound and the speaker will be asked to conclude. If necessary, a final chime will sound 15 seconds later, signifying the end of the speaker's time at the podium. And the first person to speak is Devin Stachinsky.
So I've been thinking quite a bit about something that Robin said in the last meeting and then again at governance as pertains to GP6 and GP7 with the concern for a supermajority on governance committee. Now, the only reason that there would possibly be a fear of number of members on that committee is if there is actually gatekeeping being done by governance. That is the interpretation that I took from it. As we have seen historically, there has been quite a few instances where we are told, are we going to let this go to the full board or die right here in governance? Allow me to quote GP2E. It is the responsibility of the president and the governance committee in consultation with the superintendent to determine the meeting's agenda. Board members may add items to the agenda may add an item to the agenda by contacting the president or superintendent in advance, which will then be forwarded to the governance committee, blah, blah, blah. There's nothing in there that says that governance stops that object from going to the full board. If a board member wants, yes, then that goes on the agenda. It's just a matter of where. To quote GP6, 2, board committees may not speak or act for the board except when formally given such authority for specific and time-limited purposes. Expectations and authority will be carefully stated by the board to assure the committee authority will not conflict with authority delegated to the superintendent. Again, if your fear is a supermajority on governance committee because of potential gatekeeping, I'm guessing, then you shouldn't worry about it if objects become on the agenda when a board member requests it. instead of just, well, I don't think we need to talk about that later. To quote GP 7, 6E, committees are not empowered to make decisions for the board as a whole. Rather, they serve to make recommendations for the entire board's consideration. Does this mean that governance committee is taking and making a recommendation that something a board member wants to discuss during the regular meeting just isn't important enough to actually bring to the full board? Again, gatekeeping. There's a very simple solution to this potentially conflicted problem. Since there's already going to be a potential of 6 members on the board, excluding 3, from talking about policy and agenda setting, why not just dissolve governance committee outright and then just have a half-hour meeting after each regular board meeting with everybody here, and then nobody is left out and feels gatekept? Because I'm going to tell you, Robin, that your fear is not unfounded. Because I foresee in 1 year's time, you and Jim are going to be in the exact same spot that Jennifer and David are in. Just a little food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen Charbonneau.
Good evening. Kristen Charbonneau. I live in the Carl Bend neighborhood. I just wanted to share a couple things with the board after being out talking to many members of our community recently. One thing that was brought up to me is that before the district purchased this building, the flag that was out front used to be flown 24/7. It had a light on it, and there are community members that would be interested in having that continue. Another one is over at Carl Ben. There is snow removal that is happening in the middle of the night, and I know that that's not the issue currently, but just something to think about in the future of maybe looking at how that can be done so that it's not keeping the neighbors up in the middle of the night as the snow removal is being done for the parking lots prior to school opening. There was also concerns about since the trees were taken out from around the field over by Carl Ben, and there's a fence up there, there's a neighbor that has had rocks thrown at his property and windows broken and damaged under the siding of his building. So I really feel like I would agree with this gentleman in saying that we really need to be teaching our students how to be good citizens and holding them accountable for damage that they're doing to neighborhoods. And the last piece is that I had voiced some concerns after a parent had come to me about the graduation at Dakota High School. And I did attend that graduation ceremony, and I spoke to the parent afterwards, and there were some concerns. So next year before that graduation ceremony, I recommend that people are reaching out to the students that are graduating from Dakota High School and the parents to make sure that the ceremony is representing their wants and their needs. Thank you.
Thank you. The first item under the report section of the agenda is the FEA report. I don't believe we have a representative from the FEA here this evening, and that sometimes does happen during our summer meetings. That we will move on to the superintendent's report then. Dr. Gandhi.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. First off, I just want to acknowledge our IT, our human resources, and our business services team. I think as most of the board members know, we are going through a pretty significant conversion of our primary accounting and payroll software as an organization, for one that's been working with school districts, and the amount of work has been tremendous. We are now approaching July 1, which was always our go live date, obviously with our fiscal year, and I think they have been training almost close to 30 to 40 hours a week, nothing but Zoom calls all day and trying to get that going. So just want to commend all of that staff. That I know that it's not the summer that they expected, but I do want to just recognize their work because it's been a huge undertaking along with their everyday duties as well. Just one other procedural thing for board members, just as a process required by North Dakota Century Code, after any discharge for cause hearings, there has to be a finding of fact that is approved by the full board. So we are going to need to have a special board meeting probably sometime next week to get that done as well. So just be on the lookout for a doodle poll or more information about that. It is just basically a summary that gets turned in, but it has to be approved by the board, as the boards were the judicial officers in this case.
Thank you, Dr. Gandhi. Is there a motion for approval of the consent agenda? Jim?
I move adoption of the consent agenda with the addition of the HR addendum.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Newman. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda is approved. Business. The first item, memo 129, is the health insurance premium recommendation. That comes from planning. Jim?
Well, it actually comes from the Health Insurance Committee first and foremost, and then it comes up to planning. And I think, is Karen here? She's not with us today? I thought she was going to be, but anyway, I will present the recommendation from the Health Insurance Committee, which planning did look at. Basically, they're recommending that we have a 6% increase in our overall funding rates. And you can see the breakout of employee versus employer rates for the current calendar year of 2022 and calendar year 2023. Probably the biggest change that is being recommended is that going forward, we've had two plans. For lack of giving names to them that make sense, one was more of a traditional group health insurance plan. One was a high deductible plan. And then we had a health savings account contribution that we were making to the health plan. And I see Karen just got here, so I'll probably turn it over to her. Come to the podium, Karen. I was just explaining to him, we're looking at a 6% increase, and I was just getting to the fact that we are also recommending that we sunset the traditional plan and go forward with two high deductible plans. But take it over.
Oh, sorry. I thought maybe I could project. I've been training on our new software system, so with all the talking I've done, I thought I could just blast it out there too, but I'll use the speaker. Okay, as Jim had kind of kindly gone over for me until I got here, correct, we are looking at a 6% overall increase. The change in our copay plan design will roll out for 1 year, and we're looking to phase out the traditional plan and go with two high deductible plans. And as you can see in the outline of the memo, it's showing the different contribution levels for our single. For HSA will stay the same. Again, the sunset, the classic plan, and you have the two high deductibles. And then as you can see for the calendar year, the current funding cost and what the new calendar 2023 calendar cost will be. And then just to recap as far as what employee and employer will be increase or decrease depending on what plan they are going to be choosing when we have open enrollment in the fall. Kind of a history on why the committee started looking at, excuse me, I ran down the stairs so a little bit, decided to start taking a look at our overall health insurance plan. We were concerned as far as with the rising costs of healthcare, and then also the increasing cost of the classic plan, where we continue to have lost money in that plan, but our HSA has been funding it and helping that along. We've done, I'd say about 3 years ago, we did a major overhaul on the classic plan and really changed the dynamics of it. Along with that and premiums, this year we did a little more adjusting, but we feel as a overall for committee that it would be best for us as self-funded to go with 2 high deductible plans. So as you can see, there's information in the board memo outlining that, along with the budget report that Jackie put together for this. So I will open it up to see if anybody's got any questions I can answer between Jim and I.
Jim, go ahead.
I'd like to start by getting a motion on the floor. I'd like to move that we approve the Health Insurance Committee recommendation for a 6% funding level increase and maintenance of our health savings account contribution levels effective January 1 of 2023, and the committee's recommendation to sunset the classic copay plan and offer 2 HSA saver plans effective January 1 of 2024, and approve the 2022-23 internal service fund budget as provided in the memo.
There's been a motion. Is there a second? Second. Jim, back to you.
Yeah, just a couple of things to note. And first of all, a huge thank you to the entire Health Insurance Committee. Karen, they all do, and you do, tremendous work on behalf of all the employees of the district. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I would draw your attention to the preliminary budget report just for a moment. As Karen indicated, this has been an ongoing discussion of the committee for quite a while, trying to ascertain what's the best way to try to provide a quality health insurance plan for our employees and keep it as affordable as possible. As you can see, if you look through the revised 2022 budget, we have been, for lack of a better term, bleeding on the select choice plan, and we have been in the green on the high deductible health plan. Now, at first blush, that would tell you that, okay, well, yeah, we should obviously be on a high deductible plan. Keep in mind, many of our employees that may themselves or have a dependent on our plan that have high medical needs probably stayed on that lower traditional deductible plan. So when we move them to a higher deductible plan, their claims aren't going to go away. They're going to move into the higher deductible plan as well. But it's important to note that we're planning with the 6% increase basically to stay about even on our fund balance. We anticipate we're ending 2022 with about $5,200,000 in fund balance. And based upon the funding formula that's being recommended with the 6% increase and the employer-employee share positions, we're anticipating, and again, we won't know till all the claims come in, but we're anticipating that we might see about a $490,000 increase in that fund balance. Just so you understand, ideally, with self-funded insurance plans like we have, you'd like to have 4 to 6 months worth of claims as your fund balance. And currently our claims are running in the neighborhood of about a little over $18 million a year. So we still don't have the fund balance we'd really like to see to feel that we had as solvent of a plan as possible. All of that being said, the plan is doing pretty well. We projected and came out remarkably close for this current calendar year. I mean, less than 1% variance from the projection. So I think we've got good consultants. I think we've got a great committee, and I really support this recommendation.
Thank you, Jim. Robin?
Would somebody be so kind as to explain who is on the Health Insurance Committee and how is membership determined? I believe that Jennifer is the board appointee to that.
It's Jim now,
I'm so
current.
sorry.
No, that's okay. I have been in the past.
So with membership, who's on it and who determines that?
Jim, would you like to take that?
I'm going to throw that one over to Doug. I can tell you that membership is represented by all the different classes of our employees. And we as a board have a liaison. I'm the liaison. I am not a voting member of the committee. So it truly is an employee-driven committee. But Doug, if you could share the makeup.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yep, so that's, we do have a representative makeup of administrators and and teachers, and then classified and other professional staff. And we have and here's where I'd have to look back at my notes, but we try to have that equal makeup of each of those staff members. So as people vacate their seats, we look for that same representative to try to fill that vacancy. So directors, principals, teachers, and support staff members. You bet.
Any other questions? Thank you for being here, Karen. And if there aren't any other questions, we are ready to vote. Anne Marie?
Paulson,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Holden,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Brian Nelson,
Yes.
Robin Nelson,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes, motion passes. The second item is the 2022-23 preliminary budget approval. It's memo 130 that comes from planning. Jim, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, planning, first of all, I want to acknowledge Jackie and her team. And it's actually a very broad team. This process goes year-round, quite frankly, to build a budget and bring it to the board for consideration. So you're seeing I wouldn't say the end product, because this product will probably change between now and the end of September when the final approval is certified to go to the county. But you're really seeing the culmination of months' worth of our staff's work here. And we've got basically 6 different funds that we're going to walk you through: the general fund, the building fund, the special assessment fund, the special levy fund, the debt service fund, which is really just a pass-through fund, so you can see what debt is getting paid this year, and then our nutrition service fund. And to start the conversation, I'd like to make a motion that we provide preliminary approval of the general fund, building fund, special assessment fund, special levy fund, debt service fund, and the nutrition services fund.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Robin. Jim?
Yeah, I'm going to turn this over to Jackie in just a moment. Just a couple of observations that I'd like to share with the board, and obviously those on planning have looked at this preliminarily as well. We have a 2-step process, and this is probably good for the 4 new members that I'll get to spend time with starting in a couple of weeks. We need to have a preliminary approval of the budget by July, which is why this is in front of us today. And then the final approval for this year's operating budget will really happen in September. And between this time period and that time period, we'll see some changes. We'll get probably a better handle on really what the local property tax revenue is going to be. And there'll be some revisions based upon staffing. We'll know for sure what our student count is by the time we open up the doors in August, and that might require more hires. So there will be some changes in these budgets, just be aware of that. One global thought that I'll share with you, and then I'll turn it over to Jackie. I think she might even have a PowerPoint to share. We're looking at about a 4%, a little more than 4% increase in our projected revenue. We're looking at about a 4% increase in our projected expenditures. We are presenting to you a balanced general fund budget where the revenue we're projecting is equal to the expenditures we're projecting. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jackie, and obviously if you have questions as she's going through this, I'm assuming we'll take them as they come as opposed to waiting at the end.
Sounds good. Yep, we'll walk through here. And we tried connect earlier and I didn't have a problem, so let's try again. Instead of just kind of reading through the budget assumptions, I thought it might be a little more beneficial to have them in front of you so you can follow along. And I'm going to ask my friendly IT folks for some help because I have no receivers are detected. Bill knows, we tried this out.
Okay. Well, you know, we have to wait for it to decide not to do that anymore. Okay. 1093, 238, 6. Try again.
Oh, no, I just needed Bill to be behind me, I think. Okay, let's try that. 6. It's all because of you, Bill, that's why. All right, thank you for your patience there. So we'll start and just kind of walk through. We'll start with the general fund and kind of, they go in order of the accounting world, so that's how they will be presented. So to start with the general fund, we'll talk about our revenues. This budget has a projected 7.5% increase in our taxable valuation. We'll wait for final numbers on that from the county, which we will actually not get until October. And sometimes that is after we've already approved the final budget as well, but pretty confident in the amount. I did reach out to them. We will not be increasing or decreasing any mills. We'll leave that levied at 126.78. And just as a reminder, we do tend to have the majority of taxpayers in town take advantage of that early payment discount where they get 5% off their tax payments. And so we do back that 5% off of our estimated revenue as well. But overall, throughout the years, even if we have property taxes that weren't paid on time, our collection rate on those property taxes typically have reached close to 100% from the county and taxpayers, which has been very good historically. The other line items, so these are basically just the larger line items that have changed. We're looking at opening up some slots or spaces at the Explorer Academy for this upcoming year to offer some services to other districts outside of ourselves. And so we've built in some estimated tuition costs for that as well. And then for state revenue, which is our major source of revenue, projecting the weighted ADM units or average daily membership units that we're anticipating at the end of June here. So we're still in the process of cleaning all that information up so we can get some solid numbers and get them submitted over to the Department of Public Instruction. There was the 1% increase in state aid. So we have, per the formula, a $10,237,000 payment. Just want to caution everybody that isn't what Fargo Public Schools realizes in the end because of the deductions that take place. There is on-time funding that is factored in as well now. That is ratcheting up 10% a year over the next few years until it will hit 100%. And as I mentioned, for the per pupil payment, our state aid is offset by the value of 60 mills, which is almost $28 million. And then there's some other local revenue contributions that come into play as well that get deducted from our formula. And as we mentioned, the final budget gets approved in October. However, we will not know final state aid allocations until November. So those are always estimated as well. I think that's it for revenues for the general fund. So let's pause and take some questions.
Robin, go ahead.
So we're talking about deadlines and not knowing everything until we approve the budget. I think it would be important for everybody to understand that these deadlines are not self-imposed. So they are part of North Dakota state statute to have deadlines for the proposed budget and the final budget. And a lot of times those proposed budgets are prior to us knowing what the revenue is going to be. So thank you. I know we are operating on budget assumptions because that's part of the accounting world, but I think that's important to state.
Thank you.
Jennifer.
Thank you. Jackie, do you want to take a minute to just kind of highlight or explain how when we talk about the mills remain the same at 126.78, but when you look at our property tax revenue increase, $4 million is the increase over last year based on these projections. So can you just kind of touch on how can your mills stay the same? Yes, how this happens for everyone?
So we levy a mill, and the value of a mill changes from year to year based on the values that are assessed by the county. While levying entities, which are more than just Fargo Public Schools, includes parks, police, fire, those types of entities as well, that increased and assessed value is what you end up realizing, which does allow us to keep our mills at the same level and not impose additional taxes that way on our taxpayers. Also would like to point out that, we are currently capped at 127, so that is the maximum we could levy in the general fund. I'll call them the regular mills. There would be other mills available to us too that we do not currently utilize. And that in the not too distant future, we will have to come back for some input from citizens on that levy cap as well. Does that help answer questions?
David?
I think, excuse me, I think this is probably a question that Dr. Gandhi can answer better than Jackie. You're anticipating additional tuition for the Explorer Academy. I think there was an issue earlier in the year about getting that fully staffed. Is the Explorer Academy now fully staffed?
I will look at Missy for that, because that's a little bit of a tricky question. So yes, because we have students on a rolling basis, so we have the staff appropriate for the students. We didn't open up with all of the grade level options, which Missy can maybe talk a little bit about more next year, because even the ability to open up to other schools may depend on the grade level, because we have an elementary and a middle school component, and where there's room or where the IEP team's needs can be met. So I think it's a hard question to answer, because students are placed there based on the IEP team decision. So there's no hard capacity, but Missy can talk about the staffing where we have and what we hope to accomplish for other school districts next year.
So this current year, we had 2 elementary teachers and 2 middle school teachers. And we probably had a little bit of space for a couple of students that could have come in this year as we were, I guess, learning the ropes going forward. We did expand and we hired an additional elementary teacher, an additional middle school teacher. All teachers are hired for next fall. And the only position we have open right now is our I'm going to call it the wrong name, maker space room, but Bob, help me out.
The Smart Lab.
Smart Lab. So we need a Smart Lab facilitator. We've been in partnership with the North Dakota School for Distance Ed, and it allows us to have science, technology, engineering, computer lab that they've supplied that we get to use for the students. So we're looking for a facilitator for that. But we can add students, and we did have our first student at the end of the school year that we used a contract with West Fargo. They were our student, and they had moved. And so I think we've worked through a lot of the bumps, and we're ready for that next step.
How about the psychologists and counseling? I think those positions were incredibly hard to fill, weren't they? Are they filled?
It is filled. It's our school psychologist was there all year. It was one of our own who transferred to the Explorer Academy. So right now we have, from my knowledge, we have 1 school psychologist opening that we have not filled yet, and they are very difficult to fill, but that's not at the Explorer Academy. Counselor, we do not have a school counselor at that site. We use a shared model. And so we do have a outside provider partner that comes in for some counseling right now.
Any other questions at this point? Jackie, go ahead.
All right, we'll move down to some of discussion on expenditures, and just like to talk a little bit about what drives some of our expenditures, and they're attached here on this slide. Our strategic initiatives, enrollment,
legislative requirements that are passed, staffing needs, wages, and benefit costs. And then, of course, there's some other increased costs that we'll discuss as well. So our strategic initiatives are tiered instruction, positive school culture and safety, engagement and experiences in co-curricular, community outreach and communication, our equitable resources and planning, and continuous improvement and accountability. So just a quick slide, and this is information from our RSP projection to show what they are anticipating our enrollment to be growing by. Just would like to point out, this is what would be deemed kind of actual enrollment. Our baseline average daily membership, when we factor in for state aid, we have weighting factors that tend to increase that as well. But just so if you notice, there's some differences in numbers there. So this is a nice trend we like to see. So then next into some of the legislative requirements, this really centers around what was passed regarding our counselor positions. And so I have the previous law that was in place, which required counselors in our secondary schools. And the new requirement that was passed beginning the next school year, so 2022, 2023, the same type of philosophy was applied to our elementary schools as well. And as a note below, we are expected then to be within that ratio. We'll be hiring some additional counselors for the upcoming school year. These are the staffing needs, the additional positions that we will be seeking to hire or have hired. Some of them I would assume already. So I won't go through all of them. A number in the special education area for secondary schools, really based on enrollment and what courses the students are choosing to take as well. You'll see a negative in there for discovery, which is really staff get shift around at the secondary and might have to move buildings or teach courses in other locations. And then some also positions in our business and finance and maintenance and operations areas as well as HR too. So wages and employee benefit costs, since the majority of our budget is spent on our staffing, the average increase overall for staff for the upcoming school year is 2%. There are some changes you'll see, some larger adjustments maybe from the previous budget to this current budget, some as proper coding as we've worked to transition to our new finance system, have the opportunity to do some more cleanup, which we continue to do every year, and hopefully get things in a tighter box going forward. Certified subs, there's a increase in that line as well due to the wage adjustments that we made in April or May. I know it was very April, okay, it was late in the school year here. The paid leave system payout, so increases because as another year happens, people are, their hourly rate or their daily rate is higher, so accordingly their payouts are higher as well. In addition, I think we're just starting to see more people cash in on that now versus maybe holding it. We have opportunities to buy back sick leave and a number of other things that staff are able to take advantage of if they so choose. Health insurance, as was discussed previously, is budgeted in here at that 6% increase that is effective in January. And then for the other lines, really for all of those open positions or the positions we're looking to hire, I do put some placeholder dollars in there in anticipation of the types of insurances or benefits that those new employees will take advantage of. Once people are hired and we get them in place, that's when we can make some of those adjustments and get everything nailed down a little tighter for that. Then our other employee benefits really are based off of wages, and so we can anticipate almost a 2% increase that will correspond to our increases in salaries as well. So I'm going to pause there because that's the biggest area of the budget, about 80% of that. If there's any questions that anyone has regarding staffing.
Robin, go ahead.
Maybe not a question, more so of a comment. We have very routinely supported our staff in our budget. I want to note that there is a 3.12% increase in staff salary that does not include benefits, and also a 6% health insurance increase premium. Our state funds have increased by 1% for each year of the biennium. And those are off, and so any additional monies that we want to spend to compensate our staff more is offset by our local property taxpayers. Our property tax and voters approved the 126.78 mills. So we do not have the ability to increase what the revenue for the Fargo Public Schools system is outside of those local mill levies and what we receive from the state. The local mills will not, something's got to give in our budget. And again, I will just say this from a comment standpoint, things are tight. I think the upcoming legislative session will be very important, but I want to compliment the planning committee administration on prioritizing our employees and keeping their workloads smaller. If we have fewer teachers, yes, we could pay them more, but that increases their workload. So this is the job of the board to prioritize what we want within the budget. And I really hope that our public and our employees understand that.
Any other comments or questions at this point? Jennifer?
So I'll just make a comment because I didn't mean to confuse people when I asked Jackie to comment on that. But I think it's also important, you just heard Robin talk about the situation often facing us every time we talk about this, but our budget. But the property tax increase is going to affect, or the increased projections will affect property owners, and they will see an increase. And so I don't want to mislead people to believe that they're not going to see an increase. It's just that our mill levy value is higher. So I think it is an important discussion to have, and the community needs to be involved in that, because if it's something that's unsustainable and large increases like that to the property owner, then there needs to be an evaluation. And I know this is a conversation we've had over 8 years, and then prior to my time, what are the priorities of the community and the stakeholders here and invested in our public schools in terms of programming, and they really need to be involved in that conversation, so that we can be looking at this from both sides of that coin. So I just wanted to make sure that that was, I think it takes a long time to clarify actually what mills and mill increases and all of that means. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to point that out. But thank you.
Robin?
I could not agree more. And that's why our legislature and one of our senators is looking to really analyze how mills are levied throughout the state. So again, underscoring how important our upcoming legislative session is. Thank you, Jennifer. I completely agree.
Brian?
And just to add to Jennifer, what she said, the amount of new buildings, new growth in the city will also be the additional increases in this thing. And people do have the opportunity to protest. We give them that opportunity, I believe, in September, I believe. And we generally have never had anybody in my 4 years that I've seen.
Any other comments or questions at this point? Jackie, go ahead.
Just in a couple items to add, one on that topic, just so everyone is aware as well, you know, mills, the value of a mill is different in every city, in every school district as well. Just want to kind of be clear on that. Really depends on the economy and the property and what's going on in each taxing district. So, okay, there was one other point, I said two. The second one was, I just want to mention, because I didn't at the beginning, that the budget before you for the general fund does not include any federal monies or state grant funds at this point in time because we have not completed the year to know what may carry over and have not received final allocations for the upcoming year. So when we get to the final budget in late September, we'll have some additional information on those funds as well. Just want to touch on that. All right, so then we'll head into the remainder of the general fund budget, which I just kind of tagged under other. We will have some increases in our contracted instruction, mostly due to some of the special education contracts that we have to have when some of these positions, it's difficult to hire. We've had to contract out services as well to try to continue to provide what we can to our students. License agreements, which is most of our software licensing, those fluctuate. Some have different terms, so they come up at different times. It's not a consistent annual renewal for everything. Laundry, you may notice, has an increase in it. That is really looking to replace some uniforms for our custodial and maintenance staff. And then to touch on contracted maintenance, that budget is in at $2 million. Initially, we put it to just contracted maintenance, but as we go through the year and our maintenance department does projects and takes care of things that need to get taken care of, those costs often get revised and moved to other areas depending on what that project entails as well. Student transportation, we will be experiencing an increase in our busing contract. It has an automatic inflator that goes to, well, it could be a deflator, I guess, if it changed the other way, but for this year, it will be an increase. It is based on the consumer price index for an urban area. Last time I checked, that was hovering around 8%, so we'll see what that is. That gets adjusted as of July 1st to our rates. There's also a fuel escalator clause in our contract, and considering the cost of fuel that is currently in effect, we probably will see some increases in that escalator coming into play as well. Utilities are another area that have significantly changed and quickly in the past few months. And Bill, I just got kicked off, so let's try that again. Okay. Now it says I'm still connected. Do you ever use this? This is what happens the first time. All right, it's trying.
Okay, so we got the code.
Yeah, it's trying again. It's just maybe telling me I'm talking too long. Okay. I'm concerned because it's the same code that it was there
gotcha.
before.
Oh, good.
All right, we're back. All right. Okay. And you will see at the end of, as we finish up this current fiscal year too, our natural gas, I think has tripled from what we anticipated that original budget to be. So hoping that slows down, but not quite so sure that it will. So we have some additional costs there. Supplies, just like everything else, has also seen an increase. And equipment, aside from some normal replacements, the maintenance department does have some need to replace some of our vans and some other vehicles that are starting to age out and just probably need to be replaced. I'm losing myself again. So I'm just going to continue because you have it in front of you in your handout. We currently, well, you approved tonight some bids for the library in McKinley, Lincoln and no, which one? Longfellow and McKinley Library furniture that we're in the process of redoing those libraries as well for those buildings. So that ends the general fund other costs. And as Jim mentioned, we're able to balance this budget in part due to the projected property tax increases, quite honestly. And we'll anticipate firming up a lot of these numbers as we get closer to final approval.
David, question?
Yeah, earlier we received a memo from Dr. Gandhi stating that a private consultant had been contacted to examine the salaries of administrative and certain professional support staff. And as a result of that, some of those salaries would be adjusted. Where does that appear in these increased costs?
So for staff that did affect, which the total cost, correct me if I'm wrong, Doug, was maybe around $50,000 overall. Does that seem right?
I can get it here in just a
Okay,
minute. but
all right.
yeah.
He can kind of let you know what that amount is. So it's really based on where that individual person is coded in those line items. It could be that they were in line 126 for maintenance. They could have been in line 111 for administrator, additional supports, or instructional support 113. I think there was maybe potentially some secretarial staff that were affected as well. So it really depends on the position and where we typically would have them coded in those line items.
It is there.
It is factored into this, yes, correct.
Thank you, Jackie. Any other questions? Tracy?
Just a general question. You mentioned that the federal dollars and no grant money is factored in. Any idea what that's expected to look like in a non-COVID year? I'm guessing dramatically different? or-
No, well, we're still operating under ESSER funding that we will have. The two pots remaining, I call them, we call them pots. ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 will not be fully expended at the end of this year. ESSER 2 goes for another year yet beyond this, and ESSER 3 goes until 2024. So really, our federal funding is going to continue to look a little skewed because of those additional dollars. I believe the, what we call our consolidated application, which is our typical title funding, so Title 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6, which is in consolidated, that is Indian education. Those funds are remaining relatively consistent. I think maybe some small increases in some, small in the others. So the remainder will be pretty constant, I think. Does that help?
Jennifer?
Thank you. Jackie, this fall, the most recent boundary change is going to affect, correct? In the fall? So would the added routes, and maybe you can remind me, how many did we end up having to add? And is that in here?
There are some other changes that play into that as well, where I think there's some restructuring of routes. So overall, I didn't add any additional routes, just because of some of the other changes that are taking place. I want to say it was, Bob and I both looked at each other, it's 2?
Or was it 4, 6?
Go ahead, Bob.
I believe it was 3 routes that needed to be added. But also at that, there are other routes that, based on previous boundary changes, are to the point where they will no longer run. So all of those need to be factored into that piece.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Continue on.
All right, so that wraps up the general fund. That's the big one. The rest should be a little smoother, hopefully. Building fund will be next. So same estimated property tax increase, about 7.5%. The building fund levies 15 mills and does take in a transfer from the special levy fund. Expenditures that we are anticipating for the 2023 school year in the building fund will be the North High Track project, and would anticipate that the majority of that then will be taken care of and completed, other than the last phase to close out. And do have some initial costs budgeted for anticipation of the early childhood special education, I'm going to call it wing, addition that will be on to Hawthorne, that we will hopefully then be bidding out this fall into winter and beginning to have some construction in the spring if board approval happens. And I just would like to note that since we aren't closed out for the year and don't have all our final bills in, this fund will change as well, as we know where we're sitting with anything that is existing in that in the fund to get paid out. So any questions on the building fund?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay. Special Assessments Fund, which is just as it sounds, for us to levy whatever is necessary in order to continue to pay our special assessments on our properties. Property tax revenue stays consistent with the other funds, 7.5% increase. Right now, the Special Assessments Fund is levying 1.25 mills. The only major outstanding specials that we still have are on the Ed Clapp property. So we are paying for that. Just to note as in the PowerPoint, the interest rate on those specials is 4.34%. And then the rest is just throughout the year, we get assessed, much like property owners do at times, for improvements that happen during the summer, typically months when they can do construction. And those are usually smaller in value, so we just pay those as they are assessed. And that's kind of the end of the Special Assessments Fund.
Any questions on that item? Go ahead, Jackie.
All right, on to the special levy. This fund is really, brings in tax revenue at the 7.5% increase. Mills levied in this fund are 11.35, and we transfer the money that is generated from that taxation in this fund over to the building fund in support of construction projects. So that is about all that takes place within the special levy fund.
Any questions regarding special levy fund? Continue on, please.
All right, debt service, as Jim mentioned earlier, this is really a pass-through fund to make our debt payments, and in the handout as well will be the anticipated principal and interest payments that will need to be paid in the upcoming year.
Any questions regarding debt service fund? Next,
All right,
nutrition services.
nutrition. Yes, Nutrition Services Fund. This has been an interesting fund to deal with since COVID started, as funding has significantly changed and moved every year. So as now going into next year, there will no longer be universal free meals. We will return to that paid meal status that happened pre-COVID for our reimbursement. Of good note, the Explorer Academy has been accepted under the community eligibility provision, and that is where free meals are provided to all students in that school. So that was good news to add to that list of schools as well. But along with paid meals, we are anticipating that some bad debt will occur as well for families typically who are on that borderline of receiving status or not. With that, we would just like to remind families how important it is to complete our forms, our eligibility forms, to provide assistance to them if we're able to. Expenditures, oh, sorry, Robin, go ahead.
You talked about community eligibility. Did Lewis and Clark fall off the eligibility?
Lewis and Clark was not a community eligibility provision school. It is Madison. Boy, I should
Oh,
know
are you
these.
talking about community services? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
I'll withdraw that.
Okay.
I'm trying to,
Okay.
my jobs are crossing over here, sorry.
All right, then expenditures for nutrition staff as well, 2% average increase for all staff. I would just like to point out how this department did definitely have its ups and mostly downs in this last year, and has really struggled as well with hiring staff. At the end of this year, they had 23 open positions. Would also like to take this time, from me at least, to thank them, because they continued the service and continued to feed our kids, and did a great job at doing that, even though they were short-staffed throughout the year. So we do have additional those positions in this budget, hopefully to be able to hire them again and get up and running in that full capacity. Same types of increases for benefits, health insurance, 6% as of January, and then budgeting for those open positions and anticipated benefits that they will take. The financial services line will increase likely, going back to paid meal status. That really represents the credit card fees that end up getting charged offering that option to our families to purchase their meals online and have them put into their student accounts with that. Cindy is also anticipating, quite significant, I think, increases in her supply and food costs, just like everyone else is and experiencing as well. And that kind of wraps up. She is anticipating a deficit in that budget, which is not a bad thing, as we are historically operating at too high of a fund balance from what the state would like us to have, which is 3 months of operations in there. So we continue to look for ways that we can maximize that as well.
Jackie, do you know how many staff members we would desire to have for nutrition services if we have the 23 that were unfilled? What would a total
Total
be
number of
ideally?
employees
Yeah,
or,
for nutrition services staff?
oof.
Is
Well, if
for
those were
perspective?
filled, they'd be at their full capacity. Off the top of my head, I can't tell you how many like FTEs they would have department-wide though. A lot of them, a lot of the positions are not in an 8 to 5 position. They're often either very early morning for just the morning hours to get things up and running, or just over those periods that we need the service too. So the positions offer some flexibility in that for people as well. And especially for people who maybe aren't looking for full-time work, 8 to 5 and want to do other things during the day.
Thank you. Anyone else? David, go ahead.
I have a question, and this is more a question for the future board, but since ESSER funds paid the entire cost of our students' meals this past year, you must know exactly what it cost or what they paid us. What would it cost if Fargo schools were to offer free meals to all students?
I would have to look up, I want to just clarify that ESSER didn't pay for those, the federal government
Okay,
just took
well,
care
whatever.
of
I
that
mean, it
part.
was because of COVID.
The concern that I would have, and I don't have year-to-date on this document, the concern I would have with Fargo Public Schools paying for free meals is the fund would not be able to sustain that, first and foremost. And then I think one of the other large concerns is that our title money, our Title I allocation, Title II, Title III, are based on the poverty data that is received from the free and reduced meal applications. And so if there wasn't a need to have those, or we weren't participating in that program, all of that money would go away as well. And so that alone would be $5 or $6 million in the general fund, in addition to the cost of what the meals would be.
Dr. Gandhi?
I'm gonna flip, David, maybe your question, if I'm getting to the correct intent, let me know, because there might be another way to get to what you're asking as well. What Jackie said is critically important, is that currently when we talk about different student groups and we take a look at different student groups, the only indicator of at-risk students right now that we use federally in K-12 education is economically disadvantaged students identified by the free and reduced lunch. And there are some very strict parameters on how to do an admin qualification without actually having the parent signature on that form. So just universally trying to get free lunch would take away that whole means of reporting who our disadvantaged students are, which would then take away resources from other funding sources, but also just identifying the needs of some of our students, because we do know that poverty can create some disparities in outcomes, at least until education can play its role in equalizing that. To your point, I think we can maybe separately get that separate information in another way. Prior to COVID, our Fargo Public Schools Foundation has always, at least the last couple of years when we went through the revision of our nutrition service policies, covered, been able to get community donors to cover the outstanding lunch debt from the individuals that weren't able to pay off their balances. And I'm sure that if I reach out to Becky or someone in the foundation, they can give us some of those numbers. I know it's not the exact question what you're asking for, but Jackie does have that. That's a different way to maybe kind of even take a look at that, if that's what you're trying to get to, is how many students were unable to pay their balances and what the community fundraising was needed to outstand that. And I think Jackie says she has it, so.
Go ahead, Jackie.
Just if I can quick, because that gave me a little opportunity to look up the year-to-date. So the federal money that we received for lunches this past fiscal year was $6.3 million. And then if you throw breakfast in there too, breakfast was another $2 million.
Jim.
I'm gonna make it real simple for you, David. If we didn't wanna charge people for meals, not counting the title funds we lose, which I think you said was 5 to 7 million, it's $7 million. Just look at the budget, our total revenues are what's gone, because we wouldn't get the federal money if we're not charging anybody for meals. So you're talking 7 million here this year, plus probably 5 to 7 million in title funds. So you're probably looking at in the neighborhood of 14 to 15 million, about 10% of our operating budget. So probably about 100 teachers.
No, I purely asked it for, I've never been told that, you know, I've never been, had it explained, and I just wondered, because people have said that, you know, we've had free lunches the past year, why doesn't Fargo continue that?
Well,
That's
first
a
of all,
pretty-
we've never had free lunches. There is no such thing as free lunch.
Well, they didn't pay this year because.
They didn't have to pay for lunch. It still wasn't free. We just got the funds from the federal government.
Well, they, call it what you want, but they didn't receive a bill.
Yeah, no, I
So
understand.
that was kind of free.
Yeah.
It's good information to have. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Jackie, for walking us through those details and answering the questions.
Call the roll.
Is there a, oh, yes, my goodness, we had a motion already and a second, didn't we? Okay, sorry about that. Anne Marie, go ahead.
Benson,
I'm sorry, can I clarify, did anyone divide the budgets, or are we voting them all in one?
All in one.
Most of the time we
The-
divide them.
The motion was made and seconded all in one.
Okay, no.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Holden,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Brian Nelson,
Yes.
Robin Nelson,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes, motion passes. There has been a request that we take a break for 10 minutes. There is an issue regarding a power outage issue, and our microphones and the connection that we have to YouTube to cover our meetings. And so I've been asked if we could take a 10-minute break, so we're going to do that. And we'll come back and we'll try to do this again at 10 to the hour. Thank you. 8:47 PM. And we had an item added to business. So there's item C, and I have it titled as NSBA membership. Jennifer had requested the addition. I'll turn it to you, Jennifer.
Thank you. So I thought it would be timely to talk about it tonight because we've been asked, and I believe Rebecca responded on behalf of the board to those media inquiries. I've received some constituent questions. Clearly, there was an article about it in the forum. And specifically, I'm referring to the decision by the North Dakota School Board Association to not renew its membership. And that membership, to my understanding, is due that renewal June 30th. Hence the timing also behind it. So I felt for a variety or multiple reasons, I should say, that it was appropriate for us to talk about it now and discuss what that means for us as a board, to be able to clarify that for the public and perhaps also board members. And what does that mean for us going forward? And then maybe a little discussion around the reasons that they gave for the separation. And maybe Anne Marie, I'm not sure if you have more information to add on top of what I have just said, but that was the reason. Thank you, Rebecca.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. So you're seeking a discussion on it?
Yes, do you want me to make a motion before we do that?
Completely up to you, what your intent
I
is.
think, if that's the way that's typically the way we conduct business, but I do think we can have this discussion. I'm okay with it before making a motion, but if you would prefer that I follow that, I'm happy to make that motion.
I would say if there is an intent for a motion to be made, that you make the motion, and and if there's a second, there can be discussion and go from there.
Okay.
So only you know your
Sure.
intent on this.
Well, just to put it out there, I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion that we follow the direction of North Dakota School Board Association, follow their lead, and non-renewal our membership with NDSBA.
With NDSBA? or-
Sorry, with NSBA, too many. National.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, Jennifer, back to you.
Yes, thank you. And I did that simply not because I'm supporting it one way or the other at this point in time. I wanted to have discussion before we get there because I think it's important. I tend to feel like what is out there around the rationale makes sense to me. But I did want to also give us the opportunity to talk about it.
Jim?
Well, I'm not sure I understand the rationale for this motion, but I'm certainly willing to listen to it. I will tell you from my perspective, I can't support this motion whatsoever. Us not being a member of the National School Boards Association is contrary to everything we believe in terms of continuous improvement as a district. I believe the State School Board Association reacted to an executive director who made a political statement for an organization that should be nonpartisan. And actually what our state board just did was took a political action as a nonpartisan organization in reflection of the alternative of that. So this is a classic example of two wrongs not making a right. And I would instead suggest that we put forward a resolution, which we'll have the opportunity to do in August, to direct the North Dakota School Boards Association to renew their membership with the National School Boards Association. As a person who's attended well over 15 state conferences and national conferences, you'll learn more at one national conference than the next 5 state conferences you go to.
Other discussion, comments? Jennifer?
Sure, I'll reply to that. I think that the fact that it sounds to me like you're acknowledging that something political happened here, and the events and the letter that was written and the position that was taken and the accusations that were made are indeed inserting politics into an association where it is said to it's not supposed to exist, but this is proof that it does. And that does concern me. And I think it should concern all of us. And I think that the North Dakota School Board Association was simply also saying, and many across the nation, how many states, 26, I think is the last thing I read, have also separated. I think that is more than just a two wrongs don't make a right. I think it is, they must have along the way demonstrated this pattern of taking some role that they never had the authority to take in the first place. Clearly not listening to our constituents at state levels and local levels. Hence why the states are saying, we're going to separate until you can get it together and go back to the intent of why the organization or the association was even designed in the first place. Because if they are making political moves, then they have departed from their initial mission and vision. And we need to, I think, say we support getting back to where the intent lies.
Robin?
You know, I completely agree with you, Jennifer. The interim executive director for NSBA and two other board members made the decision to send this letter without the approval of the larger board. So they were absolutely in the wrong. And that interim director is gone. So I do feel that that board that was elected at the national level made the right move by removing that person. So are we in a position of punishing those that have acknowledged their wrong? I think it is clearly a political statement to remove ourselves, but I tend to feel that the benefits that our board gets from NSBA membership is the training and the resources. But I think that national board did an internal investigation and realized, yep, that was the wrong thing to do. And I think it was the wrong thing to do as well. But I don't think that merits us removing us from the national organization. I completely understand your point. With no disrespect, I will not be supporting the motion because those, shall I say, those that acted without the approval of the majority of the board and spoke without the approval of the majority of the board did. And they have been, that has been acknowledged. And that's just like on this board. If somebody were to speak out and make a decision like that, you bet the rest of the board would be upset. So I condemn the letter, but don't condemn the process. And I would not want to give up on those development opportunities that we have.
David?
Robin, I appreciate your explanation. Has the current board issued a statement to retract what had been said?
Yes, they have.
Okay.
I won't be able to support the motion either. I appreciate the conversation, so there's more information for the public. And know that the Fargo School District is able to be a member of the National Association and operate in that manner, even though the North Dakota School Boards Association has decided not to. I am frustrated with the decision that the North Dakota School Boards Association made. From my information, the action that the National School Board Association took to remedy the situation is adequate. I don't agree with the activity that took place previously. I do feel that there's been an adequate remedy put in place, and I don't know where else those of us who are board members now and incoming board members will receive training if we don't renew our membership, or if we choose to still be interested in receiving training from the National Association, it would be at a higher rate to attend conferences and receive that training. So if we would decide to not continue our membership with the National Association, I don't think that we ought to be saying that's a great organization to get training from. But what we would need to do is look for another source for that training. And I'm interested, Jim, and interested in seeing where the board goes with that resolution. Thank you for making that suggestion, by the way. We have 4 new people that are going to be coming onto this board. And those board members, in addition to all of you that are going to be remaining, need that training. I just can't support the motion. Thank you for the conversation, though. Anyone else? Jennifer.
I have some additional comments, but unless somebody else, no? Okay. So around development opportunities, it's one of the things I was thinking about, Jim. One of the questions that came to mind is, okay, we go and we're committed to professional development and we pay thousands of dollars and to invest in this both collectively at the national level, the state level, and the local level. We've done some local training where we've brought in consultants for the board around governance. I think that I think it's pretty clear there are some opportunities there, and even within our policies, that's one of the roles of governance committee is to continue that professional development. I would argue that it actually applies more and it is more specific rather than general to do locally, local and state opportunities, take advantage of those education opportunities. And here's another reason I say it. It wasn't that long ago where we had the discussion at committee that we go to these conventions and listen to these sessions, but the ideas that we bring back are often not necessarily aligned with our strategic plan. And so I can't speak for you all, I can only speak for myself, but part of that conversation was, you know, what happens to these documents when we used to fill out reviews? Do they sit on a shelf and none of these ideas get implemented and it doesn't really affect policy change? Then ultimately, what is the point of sending us and spending thousands of dollars to do that, take that money and invest it in other areas that can really affect our ways, right, to make this board better specifically, because there are a lot of great ideas. And I've attended those national conventions. There are really some great best practices, but in my experience, every time I bring them back, it is something like, that's a great idea. However, it would take a massive undertaking or a realignment of budget or community priorities type things. I mean, came up with Spanish immersion, you know, I mean, there are all sorts of opportunities and that's great. But again, it's not applicable so often here. So I look at it then as a return on investment opportunity. And I think, how can we do better? Excuse me, and what kind of training can help us do that the most efficient and effective way? And I would say, I would argue it because governance is the way that this, you know, we talk about operating, that would be one key area. Clearly, there are many others we've talked about in governance committee meetings before, but when I listen to the rationale, and I do appreciate this conversation because it's all things that I've, you know, been running through the questions in my mind too, but I can't justify it because, you know, just the other day, we were talking about some of the resources that are available from the North Dakota School Board Association that we don't tap into, guidance that we don't tap into. So then why do we have a membership if we're not using the resources that they're actually giving to us? And then they're not representing and lobbying for the things that are important to us, right? Because this is, I mean, I don't know. There's, obviously, this is the one example at hand, but I think that there probably are very, you know, quite a few opportunities to point out some others. But so having said that, I'm not sure that that would convince me to keep spending the thousands of dollars in that bucket. I think that it would be worthy of a conversation to realign those and go from there. So I haven't yet been convinced not to vote to be aligned with the North Dakota School Board Association.
David.
Jennifer brings up some good points. I've also attended the National School Boards Convention, and I have attended some really fantastic sessions, and you do learn there, absolutely. Problem is, I look around the room, and I'm the only one from Fargo there. And we don't report out on them. Really, I get the knowledge, but it's not shared with anybody else. if we were, when we brought in the Aspen Group, for instance, to train us all or to refresh us on the governance model, every single board member got the opportunity to hear and experience the same materials. And if we were to take not the thousands that Jennifer's talking about, but the cost with us sending representatives to the convention, the registration, everything is tens of thousands of dollars. If we spent that on training in the state or in the city of Fargo for our board, maybe it would be more productive than what we're getting out of the School Boards Association. And that's my opinion. I see the purpose of being a part of an association, just as I was always a part of NDU and NEA. But you have to look at how much it's costing and the cost effectiveness, and that's what I'm struggling with right now.
Dr. Gandhi?
I'm gonna stay out of kind of the philosophical conversation that's really for the board to decide, but just to kind of maybe provide some information on the generalizations and maybe some of the information that's been thrown out there. I started in my role here in 2018. At that time, we were coming off of negotiations. One of the biggest challenges considering our district at that time was student behaviors that were more aggressive in nature and staff injuries. 2019, that year, David, you and I were the only people that went to a Nukeru session at North Dakota School Boards at the National School Boards Association. We came back, there weren't other board members there, it was you and I that were in that session. But we did implement that. And since then, we've seen an 80% reduction in staff injuries and over a 60% reduction in student seclusion or restraints. And to the point where we are now flagged nationally, federally, as a model program that we were told by OCI for our practices around trauma-informed care. So I would just say that whatever the philosophical conversation is, it would be untrue to say that there aren't things that haven't been implemented, or that just because one board member or one member of administration was there, there aren't things that we haven't brought back. And that's true for any professional development we go. We try to see what applies to our situation, but I don't know if that would necessarily give credence to a large generalization that may or may not be true holistically.
Jennifer?
Thank you. Jackie, not to put you on the spot, I'm so sorry, and maybe you need a minute to look it up, but could you tell us how much the membership fees are, how much the registration, like calculated? I feel like we've seen it maybe several years ago, but I'm not sure if the membership fees are on there. And as Rebecca mentioned, member versus non-member to be able to still attend. Maybe you can answer that for me.
I may be the only one. Anne Marie, am I the one that has this handout? Okay, so thank you, Anne Marie, for providing this. Dues for being a national connection, for being a member of NSBA amount to $5,335. Membership is on an annual basis from July 1st to June 30th. We have been a member at this level since August 5th of 1975. So there have been many, many years where Fargo Public Schools has determined that it's important to be a member of the National School Boards Association. Jim? Second? Tracy, did you second it? Thank you. Anne Marie?
Gullickson?
Would you mind repeating the motion, just so I'm,
You are voting on previous question, which would end debate.
yes.
Holden?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Brian Nelson?
Yes.
Robin Nelson?
Yes.
Newman?
Yes.
Paulson?
No.
Benson?
No.
Knutson?
Yes, motion passes.
Voting on the motion, which is to follow the direction of NDSBA and non-renew the membership with NSBA. Holden?
No.
Johnson?
No.
Brian Nelson?
No.
Robin Nelson?
No.
Newman?
No.
Paulson?
No.
Benson?
Yes.
Gullickson?
No.
Knutson?
No, motion fails. That takes us through business. The next section contains board reports, committee liaison, and correspondence reports. Dr. Newman did mention to me that she had to leave early this evening, so I see she has exited. We'll go ahead with you, Seth.
I have nothing to report this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jennifer?
If you could clarify for me, Rebecca, are you also, so I know that you're giving appreciation of retiring board members. Are we going to be given a chance to speak after that? Or do you want us to share our comments now during our share out time?
Well, it's not on our agenda for us to be doing that. I would suggest whatever you feel like you need to share for committee liaison and correspondence reports.
Just share it.
Go ahead and do that.
Share it now.
If there's something you feel you need to share, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a few comments that I would like to make, and I know in past years, other outgoing board members have addressed the board and taken an opportunity to do that, and it has been 8 years, and we've been through a lot in 8 years, so I would like to say a few things, and I wrote them down, so I hope you don't mind, but I have certainly experienced, as we all have, a lot in the last 8 years, and I honestly will miss the work of the board. I want to say thank you to the board members who embrace debate and who put their egos aside when making decisions. Thank you for your service. I attended school board meetings for a year, maybe even more, before I ran for a seat on this board. I participated in district and community task force. I went to chamber events. I studied other boards. I wanted to make sure that I did this job well. As I reflect on all that I have experienced and all that I've learned, I just wanted to take a few minutes to share a few things I wish that I had better understood sooner rather than later. My hope is that it will give those who are seated in July a bit of a head start. Some of you will tune out what I have to say, and that's fine. This is for those that are still interested in approaching each matter at hand with an open mind and an ongoing effort to find examples of how we might learn from others. Always remember why you are here. Your role is to make decisions about education, to implement policies that lead to high educational performance and continued growth. Always remember who you are here to serve. Don't allow political pressures to cause you to waver from the oath of office you swore to uphold. Discussions and topic can stir emotion, but if you follow the oath that you took, you can set those aside, allowing the U.S. Constitution, the North Dakota State Constitution, and the Century Code to be your guide. They are your foundation. They define your duties, your powers, your purpose. Study them, use them, and be prepared. You will be told to speak with one voice. This is a misguided policy. You don't work for the board. You work for the people. There is no such thing as a hybrid governance model. A governance model requires the board to establish defined, desired results that will be measured and monitored for progress and verified with documented evidence. Student achievement is your top priority, and parents, students, staff, and your community are your primary stakeholders. At the core of every decision you are faced with, you will need to answer these 3 questions. Is it lawful? Meaning, is it constitutional? Understand both the U.S. Constitution and the state constitution. Next, does it matter? Does the matter fall within your duties and powers as prescribed by state law? Will it have a positive impact on student achievement? If the answer is no to any one of these, you have a responsibility to vote it down. I want to emphasize here that medical mandates of any kind are an absolute overreach. One of the most memorable things I heard State Superintendent Basler say, it was during a conference call with school board members across the state post-COVID lockdowns. She sternly reminded us that we are placing big people problems on the backs of our kids. She said we should be acknowledging how difficult these last years have been for our kids. We need to take accountability and seek to understand where we could have and should have done better. Superintendent Basler was spot on when she said, we should not be involving kids in our political or social debate. These things are not their burden to bear. And what I want to leave you with is this. We are all Americans. And at the core is freedom. But always remember, freedom is not free. We are granted constitutional protections when we are born or when we become citizens. But each one of us is responsible for defending and supporting the process by which these freedoms are protected. And if we allow this democratic process to fail, we are no longer free. Thank you for giving me that time.
David, go ahead.
I considered an incredible honor that the patrons of Fargo have allowed me to be a part of this school board for the last 8 years. I have had an interesting time, and I have enjoyed working with each and every one of you. It hasn't always been smooth, but all I have to remember is my last family reunion to realize that you get this many people together and you find them all in agreement and something is definitely wrong. I have enjoyed it. I would have liked to have spent another 4 years on this board, but I encourage you all to continue to work for the students of the Fargo Public Schools and to listen to the parents. And to those 4 new board members, I congratulate you. I hope that you have as good a time on the board as I've had. I encourage you to listen very carefully to the parents. They are your boss. They are the ones who elected you, and they deserve to know that they are being represented by the board. I ask that you all respect one another. It doesn't matter whether I agree or disagree with you. You have my respect because of your position. And I don't feel that this board has always done that in the way that it should have. I encourage you to participate in active discussions, not be afraid to take a position that may not be in the majority. My participation in many, many, many 7-2 votes is an example of that. But I do want to once again thank the patrons of this district for electing me and giving me the opportunity to serve on this board, and I will always appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Nikki, go ahead.
Thank you, President Knudsen. I enjoyed listening to both of you, and more will be forthcoming on that. But I wasn't able to join in our last meeting because I was traveling, so I just have a few things, but they're worthy of sharing, so I wanted to get them out. June 6th, we met as CEA. We adjusted that because of other things going on. June 8th, I attended the Teacher Shortage Summit in Bismarck. Really enjoyed that work. Am continuing that work, and they sent out committees for people to join on to. So I chose the Teacher Retention Committee, and I'm looking forward to that work, trying to learn ways to help our teachers. There, I think, are 5 or 6 different committees, but I'm looking forward to continuing that work. It was wonderful conversations, and we'll continue to share that, bring that back here. On June 9th, Governor's Innovative Education Summit was absolutely fabulous. It was out in Dickinson. I learned a great deal. It was refreshing, encouraging to listen to our governor speak about the Learn Anywhere or Learn Everywhere bill, about talking about maybe military as a choice. Being a part of the task force for ESSA for the last several years with Superintendent Basler, That is part of what we work so hard, is that every student is ready for the next choice, whether it's military, whether it's college, whether it's work. So it was a day well spent with doing that one. June 15th, traveled out to DC, met with each of our senators' offices. We did this through PTA. It was the beginning of our national convention. Typically, we go in March. This year, we put it all together. The three asks that we had were, okay, I had this ready till it went to sleep, were for enacting sensible community safety and youth violence prevention measures, addressing the current youth mental health crisis, and reauthorizing the Child Nutrition Act. And a piece of that is the lunch that we have referred to prior. A lot of people working on trying to get that continued. We're not having a whole lot of luck, but still trying. While we were there, we also heard from the U.S. Surgeon General, U.S. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona, and we always have the First Lady come and visit. This year it was Joe Biden. A few years back it was Melania Trump. If anybody has interest in listening to those various presentations, you're welcome to. If you look for National Parent Teacher Organization on Facebook, it was a wonderful discussion, moderated by Rahima Ellis, I believe. So lots of things going on in the last couple of weeks. Then June 21st, we had the discharge for cause hearing. The 22nd, I met with the FPS Foundation. I'm on their critical needs task force. And June 23rd, we had governance, and today I'm here. So thank you.
Thank you. Brian?
I'll try to keep this simple, but I want to thank some people. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the new candidates, or the new elected board members. Having done this, been involved in public education for 34 years, I'd be more than happy to help answer any questions for you if you ever wanted to meet, go over finances, anything. I have quite a lot of knowledge for you if you would ever like it. I'd like to thank Anne Marie for keeping me grounded and keeping moving forward. You've always treated me just wonderfully, and I'm gonna assume you treated everybody that way as well, so not just me. So thank you for that. You're just a classy person, and I appreciate everything that you've done. I'd like to thank the cabinet as well for all the documents that you've provided, following our policies and things like that. One of the first things whenever I congratulate Dr. Gandhi about things is he never takes that credit. He always reflects it back to his wonderful cabinet that he works with. And I like that about him, because it shows he's a team player and he knows how it works. It's a good attribute, like Coach K at Duke. I'd like to thank Rebecca for your 3 years of being the president, Robin for your 1 year of being the president. That's no easy thing, and it's not easy in a small town, and I can't imagine what it'll be like in a large town. But I do appreciate everything you did. I appreciate all of you board members for all of your slants. I always look at you and I think, okay, I've had 34 years to learn all of this. And then I look at you guys, 8 years. Seth, 2 years, 2 years. Jim, 20, lots of years. And I won't say it, Rob. But I really do admire how you learn fast and have great discussions, because it's taken me a long time to get to my level. And so I appreciate that. So with all of that, and finally, I'd like to thank Dr. Gandhi. And, to be one of your board members in your first 4 years as being a superintendent, I'm going to follow you and watch where you go. And the good news is I get to be in this still as a superintendent in North and South Dakota. I'm not going away anytime soon, so I'm going to be fighting for public ed just like everybody else in this room is. And so thank you, Dr. Gandhi, for leading us. And I appreciate everything everybody has done in here. I think for the most part, we agree we're doing this for kids. And so that's what matters. So thank you. It's been a wonderful ride. I'll cherish it.
Thank you. Robin?
Well, I'll keep mine very brief. On June 21st, I attended the non-renewal hearing for a teacher, and on June 23rd, I attended the governance meeting, and those minutes are available on the public website. And I believe I will have some closing statements when we finish up here on reports. Thank you.
Jim?
Nothing really to report. Had planning and governance since the last meeting.
Thank you, everyone. In terms of a president's report, what I would say is that the details regarding our training or the board's training with the FEA that to round out the memorandum of understanding that was signed as part of the negotiations agreement are there are a couple of details that are still to be firmed up. I know there are dates that you have been asked to hold, and so keep holding those dates. There has been a little bit of a discrepancy on the fee. There was a fee that we had initially discussed, we meaning Kim and myself, and Seth was involved as negotiations chair, and Grant Kraft as negotiations member from the FEA. The individual that provided us with a draft of the contract, provided us with a little bit of a higher rate than we originally talked about, so that's being discussed. And then also the participating teachers in that training, there's some discussion still regarding what the process will be for those teachers to have their leave, basically, how that is going to be handled. So those two items are still being worked out. So that would be specific details regarding a president's report that I would share with you this evening. I could echo what everyone said here basically tonight. This has been a fantastic ride, no matter what challenges we have had in terms of our different positions on topics that come in front of us or not. Serving as a board member for Fargo Public Schools is an amazing experience. And to have 15 people interested in running and in doing the work of the board is really fantastic. There are so many times where there aren't enough people, that want to be involved. And so I had the opportunity to meet with the 4 new board members earlier. We had kind of a mini orientation session, and so shared a lot of my thoughts with them in terms of some kind of ideas for moving forward. So you can take those and see what you decide to do with them, and as you work with the board members that are going to remain. So it has been an incredible honor. There's nothing like being elected by the public, by those who choose to show up to vote. They're the people that make the decisions in terms of who serves on this board. And it really is an honor. It's a lot of work. It's work that is needed and worthwhile. And so thanks to everyone here that's sitting at the dais today for the time. And when there are challenges, we learn from each other. And sit and listen and take information in that you don't agree with, or continue to do that. So those would be my unprepared comments that sharing with you this evening. So it's been wonderful. And now we are moving on to item 9, board recognition, appreciation to retiring board members. And Anne Marie informed me to turn this over to Jim. So go ahead.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's my distinct privilege to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Brian Nelson for his service on the Fargo School Board. You won a seat on this board in 2018 out of a field of 10 candidates as pretty much a brand new person to our community. So congratulations. It's been a heck of a 4-year ride. Since that time, you've been an active and very contributing member of this board. You've served on the district's calendar committee all 4 years of your term. You have served and offered your immense knowledge to the planning committee in terms of your understanding of school funding, curriculum, and quite frankly, just a history of being involved in public education. Additionally, you served on the negotiation committee and have been a negotiator. You've served on the Government Affairs Committee and on the Communications Committee. As a lifelong learner yourself, you've attended professional development both at the state and the national level. Brian, your entire professional career has been dedicated to students in the state of North Dakota, and more recently, some in South Dakota as well, I might add. Due to your background in teaching, educational leadership, you've brought the knowledge of North Dakota school funding to this board, school operations, policy, federal law, and much, much more. I can't thank you enough for the gifts you've given in this boardroom. We've had the appreciation of that expertise, and you have advocated time and time again for what's best for students, while acknowledging the financial impact that it has on taxpayers and the citizens of our community. You've enjoyed engaging with our administration, as was just demonstrated by the thanks you just handed out. And I think you shared that one of your highlighted moments of being a board member was the opportunity to hand diplomas to our graduating seniors. Brian, thank you for your dedication and service. On behalf of the board, I'd like to present you with a small token of our appreciation and recognition for your service.
Thank you, Jim.
Why don't you look over here at this guy?
Thank you.
And I think I'll turn it over to Seth.
Thank you, Jim. David, tonight, your 2 terms in your 8 years come to a close on the Fargo Board of Education, and you clearly have a passion for education, as has been the focus of your professional life. You're a strong supporter of all teachers and employees of our district, and you are vocal that decisions must be focused on our students, as you definitely demonstrated tonight in your statement. Thank you for your dedicated time at this table. During your entire time on the board, you've been a member of the negotiations committee and chaired that committee twice. And I would like to take the opportunity to share something that was shared with me by FEA leadership, that they absolutely appreciated your leadership in the last negotiation cycle. So on behalf of them, I guess, too, as well, and us, thank you for serving as a committed negotiator during your tenure and your collaboration with the teachers at the table. You've lent your knowledge to all of the board's standing committees during your time on the board, and you've served on the Leave Bank Committee 7 times. And we're a member of the Community Engagement Ad Hoc Committee during the 2015-16 school year to prep for the 2017 mill levy vote. Additionally, you served on the Cass County Career and Technical Education Consortium Board during 3 school years, and we all appreciate your dedication to those roles. In your time, in your board tenure, the updated strategic plan was put into place, school boundaries changed multiple times, and 2 schools, Ed Clapp and Eagles, were both built, and along with the Operations Center and the Explorer Academy. Many difficult decisions have had to be made during your 8 years on the board, especially the last few years during this pandemic, and we thank you for your input on everything, every discussion that we had on that. You are known for asking hard questions to your administrators and being a voice for our teachers and community members. You critically analyze our budget and advocate for funds to be allocated to the betterment of our schools, the education of our students, and the support of our teachers. Thank you for always digging in and wanting to make the best possible decision for the students of Fargo Public Schools. And on behalf of the board, I'd like to present you with this recognition for your service.
And with that, I will jump in. Jennifer, your active participation in the work of the board began in 2013 when the district was looking at its facilities and making a plan for the future. You were concerned about the overcrowding at Kennedy Elementary School and what the administration was planning for the future. You engaged at that point with the work of the district, joining the Long Range Facilities Task Force, which met in the spring of 2013. You ran for and were elected to the board in 2014 and again in 2018. Your focus hasn't changed since 2013. You are steadfast on ensuring equitable, healthy, and safe learning environments for our kiddos. You have been a member of the Planning Committee your entire tenure on the board. You have served as a chair of the Communications Committee and the Government Affairs Committee, and been the board's representative on the Health Insurance Committee for 6 times. You've been a board negotiator at the table with the FEA as well. Additionally, your outside liaison assignments have included the Fargo Youth Commission and the Community Development Committee. Jennifer, you're diligent in your preparation for the board's work and are committed to all of your board roles. You are a champion for professional development, continuous improvement, and acquiring knowledge. And you have been dedicated to attending conferences and seminars, as we discussed earlier. You are willing to stay late and put in the time, all in the name of what's best for students. You are devoted to engaging with parents and community members, willing to hear about their experiences and desiring to make impactful change on their behalf. You seek to understand, you push for data-driven accountability and decisions. You are passionate about children, teachers, and our district as a whole. Sincerely, we thank you for your commitment, your time, and your talents the last 8 years. We wish you all the best in your future endeavors. On behalf of the board, I present you with this recognition of service to your community and the students of our district.
Now it's my turn. Rebecca, thank you for your 8 years of service on the Fargo Board of Education, along with your time as our president for the last 2 years. You first addressed the Board of Education on March 12th, 2013 as a parent. The board minutes of that meeting reflect that it was a popular meeting to speak to the board, and you almost weren't allowed to speak due to public comment time constraints. After a vote of the board to continue on with public comment, you were able to share that your thoughts on the possibility of school closures and the long-range facility planning of the district. You joined, like Jennifer, the Long-Range Facility Planning Task Force in 2013, and at that point, your interest and dedication to our district began. You first won election to the board in 2014 as the top vote getter in a field of 11 candidates and were re-elected in 2018. In your time on the board, you have been a very active board member. You have served as our vice president once and president 3 times. You have been a continual member of the Communications Committee, serving as the chair committee twice, and were instrumental in the transition of that committee to the Communication, Engagement, and Advocacy Committee. You have shared your knowledge and talents with the Governmental Affairs Committee as well, also serving as chair of that committee during your tenure. You served on the Strategic Plan Ad Hoc Committee and Community Engagement Ad Hoc Committee. For outside liaison assignments, you participated in the Early Childhood Coalition Board and Core Neighborhood Plan Steering Committee. You have also served on the Fargo Native American Commission, which I know is one of your favorites, and I know that means a lot to you, continuously since 2016, an assignment you have shared that you immensely enjoy, and a commission that you have been an honor to be a part. Rebecca, you are a champion of discussion and dialogue. You wish to engage with all of those Fargo Public Schools, whether it be the students, parents, community members, teachers, staff, or administration. The board's work on the board's functions is important to you, and you are focused on policy procedures, desiring to always work to improve on how the board operates. You are passionate about learning, both in the sense for the growth of the children of Fargo and for yourself as a board member. Your desire to always learn and grow Gathering information and data from others for informed decisions is commendable. You bring a respectful and consistent demeanor to the board table, acknowledging that disagreement is part of what we do, but ensuring it is done in a respectful manner. Rebecca, thank you for your 8 years of commitment to Fargo Public Schools. On behalf of the board, I present you with this recognition of your service to the community and the students of our district, and this plaque in honor of your service to the board as our board president. So, you hold two. Here, you hold this one. Is that what we're doing? Okay, I don't know. Are we here? Or something?
Oh, we made it through that. Thank you, everyone. That's wonderful to have those very kind words said. I think that it is, I think that's a really nice way to close this out and to show that even though, again, we have some differing opinions oftentimes, look at us come together. And I really look for the new board to do that as well. Sometimes it's like if you're on opposing sports teams or something, at the end of the game, still go through and shake hands and say, it was a good game. Good game, thanks for the competition, thanks for the challenge. So I think this is a really great demonstration of that. So thanks to all of you. And that takes us to the next board meeting reminder, which is July 12th, and that will be the time where new board members are seated. So that will be a very exciting meeting. And now we are adjourned. It is 7:40 p.m. Thanks, everyone.